The 97th edition of the Roy's Boys podcast starts right now.
It's not about you. It's about that name on the front of your jersey.
And ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores. Pushes into Hubert Davis. 8 seconds. Davis trying to get free. Over to Fox. Fox, baseline. Up for the shot. Good. Off the glass. Oklahoma calls timeout. But the game is over. The game is over. Carolina has upset number 1 Oklahoma.
With 20 seconds left to play. Goes back to Michael Jordan. Jumper from out on the left. Good. 63-62. 13, 12, 11. Georgetown with one timeout. Fred Brown looking. Oh, way to Worthy. Worthy 5. The Tar Heels are going to win the national championship.
Rebounded by Weber. Michigan out of timeout. Weber front court. Carolina with foul. He takes the timeout. They're out of timeout. Technical foul. Technical foul. Brown gets it into Williams. Here comes Williams front court. Williams on the drive. Gets it back out the head. Long outside shot. Short rebounded. It's over. Carolina has won the national championship. How about them Tar Heels? They are the national champions.
That's it! Make room for 2017. The Tar Heels are the national dadgum champions.
That's what it's all about right there. That's on the floor. That's on your shirt. That's in your heart. That's why we're all here.
This is the Roy's Boys podcast with your host, Joshua Marlowe.
Hey everybody, welcome into another edition of the Roy's Boys podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. We want to say Happy New Year to you guys. That is now officially 2020. And we have vision locked down for the 2020 season that gets into ACC play full effect this Saturday afternoon in the Smith Center, where Carolina will play host to Georgia Tech. Some exciting news as that we purchased tickets for the game. This will be Anthony's first experience watching the Tar Heels play in the Smith Center. Buddy, I know you're pretty excited about this kind of experience for you.
Yeah, I'm fired up. Apparently, I'm being ripped on social media for being a pathetic fan for not being able to get to a game before this. I blame money woes.
Oh,
that's the reason why.
You're not allowed to.
Because that's a legitimate reason why?
No.
Yeah,
it's not a legitimate reason why.
No, it is a legitimate reason.
Blame
why.
work. Work has screwed us the last couple
of
years.
Work schedule has been one of the other problems as well. It's not easy to get off during the week to go see them play. And how many weekend games have they? I mean, have they really played? I mean, there's usually about what in the Smith Center? I would say probably 2 or 3 Saturday games a year.
Not during ACC play. Most of that, they're going to play a lot on Saturdays in ACC play. Look, beside the fact, this game makes a lot of sense for us to go to.
Right.
Roy Williams has a chance to pass Dean Smith at home in the Smith Center. That kind of made sense for us to kind of break down and go before our work schedule heats up in the coming months. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited for you. And so let's go ahead and focus on Georgia Tech. And look, I'm going to be brutally honest. This isn't a team that that should be able to compete with Carolina despite all the injuries the Tar Heels have. This is not a very good team, and a lot of it is not overly their fault. Their season was over before it got started. They got put on a postseason ban in the offseason for some stuff that's happened under Josh Pastner, and you worried about going into the year, their buy-in factor, knowing that they can't even play for a chance to go to the big dance. Now, I don't know if they wouldn't have been banned from the postseason, if they would be a team that was playing in March Madness. Quite
Probably
frankly,
not. Yeah.
I don't think so. They come into the game with a 6-7 record, and they haven't beaten anybody. They've struggled to beat some of the smaller teams that they've played, and I'm a big fan of Josh Pastner. I loved him at Memphis. I thought he could go to Georgia Tech and kind of turn that thing around and get them competing in the ACC. He won the ACC Coach of the Year, but that was because that year they won 8 games in the ACC where they were predicted to win maybe 2 at the most. And that's not saying a whole lot. They've got some guys that you've heard of. Michael DeVoe's a guy that's been around the league a long time.
Right.
Alvarado is back. He's been around the ACC. But these are still guys that even though they've been around, they haven't won, and that hasn't changed this year.
Yeah, no, I mean, you look at the fact that, I mean, scoring less than Carolina, scoring 65.4 points per game, that's not going to get it done. I mean, they are a pretty solid defensive team, but, I mean, you mentioned who they've played so far this year. A lot of no-names, and they have even struggled to beat some of them. I mean, you talked about a loss against Ball State at home. This is just really one of those basketball teams that you're going to see with them and Boston College at the bottom of the ACC that I'm not going to say, I mean, look, you still got to come in ready to play because this is the thing that Carolina has to realize. People are looking at them as being vulnerable this year. And, look, you get a chance to come out and beat a blue blood, they're going to come out motivated. So while this team may not be great, this is still a team that if they do enough things right, they could still pull out a victory. And so it's one of those teams that you would expect Carolina to beat, but they have to come out prepared, or else they're going to be in another tough battle. Something you want to try to avoid in ACC play if you can. You want to have a couple of those games where you get the job done early and are really able to move on and kind of rest some of your guys and focus on some of the games that are coming up. This is one of those games early on in the slate that, if we're looking at them to be competitive in the ACC or really even just to make the NCAA tournament, they've got to win this game.
Yeah, I mean, look, you talk about, not messing around. You don't want to give Georgia Tech a way to salvage their season. If they beat Carolina in the Smith Center, then the lost season now has something to say because you won in a place that you just haven't won a whole lot in. And we stress starting with the UCLA game how important that game was moving forward, and they were able to take care of business against UCLA. They took care of good business against Yale. They got to 8-5, so they're they're the 3 games above 500, and they got their next 3 games at home that all to start the full run of the ACC gauntlet. And if you can find a way to win all 3 of those games, suddenly you're 11-5, you're 4-1 in ACC play, and you're just feeling a lot more better about where you're at. That means Cole Anthony is probably 2 weeks away from coming back. You get your best player back. You still are treading above water as you get prepared for the February portion of your schedule, which is where it's going to heat up, starting with that first Duke game. And I think in this game, look, Carolina, they did some things against Yale that you were like, okay, you can see that they're progressing in the right direction, mainly with Jeremiah Francis' ability to be creative off the bounce, attack the defense, flatten the defense out, and get the ball to the bigs. But then you would see stretches like to start the second half. They gave up a 7-0 run to start the second half again, something that's really struggled with this team all year long.
Every game, really, since Ohio, since Michigan, you had it, and then you didn't really see it against Oregon, but really it was Michigan, and then from the Ohio State game on, this has been every single game. They let up some sort of run to start the second half, and they're lucky that they're able to recover the last few games, but the thing is once you get into ACC play, look, these first couple of games, you should really have no trouble because, like we just said, Georgia Tech, we don't really think they're all that great just from looking at what they've done this season. You got Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh's still a team that's building. Granted, they've won, what is it now? Is it 9 or has it grown to 10 in a row?
It's 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10, and then you've got Clemson, who hasn't won ever in Chapel Hill. So, those games you might be able to sidestep some of those, and even if they are able to get some good runs to start the second half, you might be all right. You do that later in the year against Duke, Virginia, again, when you see them, Louisville, you're not going to, there's no way you're going to find ways to win those games. That's what's going to be the difference between you hanging around in a game and giving yourself a chance to win late and you being down double digits late in the game.
Yeah, and so that's one thing that I'm pretty sure that Roy Williams and this staff has harped on. We've seen Roy Williams call timeouts early in the second half to try to stop whatever's going wrong from when they close the first half and go to halftime. They come out in the second half, and they look like they've never played basketball.
Chris Vitola asked a great question the other night. Is it just that they're not warming up right after halftime? Like, it's just so weird that you go into the locker room, and usually what ends up happening is they finish the half pretty well. They're getting to the basket. They're doing some things to either take the lead into halftime or in a couple of the games against Ohio State and Virginia, close in on their lead before halftime. But then when they come out of the locker room, I don't know what it is. They just cannot seem to bring that same energy that they had at the end of the first half to the start of the second half. And every time they have to either call timeout, Roy has to call timeout because it gets that bad that quickly, or he ends up, if it really isn't that bad, but they come out and still somehow put together an 8-0 run within the first 4 minutes, wait until that under 16 timeout. You just want to see this team come out and, especially if you've got a nice lead at halftime of 7 or 8 or, double digits like they had against UCLA, you come out and let them right back into the game. That's something that you want to avoid if you're Carolina. And I mean, it's an interesting question of what is wrong with them at the start of second half. So what's changing that needs to be fixed?
Yeah, and it's something that I think it's going to be a year-long work in progress. They'll probably never get better at it in terms of eliminating it, but it's going to be something that if this team wants to take the next step and be a team that's going to compete for, let's say, a double bye in the ACC tournament, you're gonna get better at that aspect. One thing that came out of the Yale game that needs to carry over the rest of the way: Brandon Robinson, Justin Pierce had arguably both of their best games of the year. B-Rob dropped 20 points, hit 5 3-pointers, both career highs in that category. Pierce gave you 14 points off the bench, 6 of 11 shooting. Carolina needs both of those guys to start contributing at a consistent level because you're out without Cole Anthony. We don't know how long Anthony Harris is going to be gone, and we're assuming he's not going to play.
Yeah.
And so you're missing that production. Carolina needs that. I'm not saying B-Rob's got to score 20 and Pierce got to average 14, but they've got to become consistent contributors, for B-Rob in the starting lineup, Pierce off the bench to keep Carolina's offense afloat.
Well, if you're going to play as much minutes as these guys are playing, yes, you want to see a little more consistency. That's the name of the game with those two right now because we just haven't really seen it on a consistent basis from those guys just yet. I mean, B-Rob, even the other night, it's just some of the shot selection from B-Rob is just head-scratching because, I mean, he really didn't have a bad night the other night, but he had a couple of those shots that were early in the shot clock that were unnecessary and finishes 7 of 18 from the field. And, I think that if he can continue to get a little bit smarter with the shots that he's taking, he's starting to show that his shooting stroke's starting to come to him a little bit, and that's good for Carolina because they need someone that can shoot the ball from the perimeter because they just haven't really had it so far this season. I think that's really going to help this team. And then you look at Justin Pierce, a guy that's coming off the bench, and I think that role fits him very well. We saw it early in the year against UNCW, and then we saw it in the last game against Yale. You're right. We need this on a consistent basis in ACC play, especially with the fact that Sterling Manley is not coming back through those doors this year. He is done for the year, and you really still lack that presence inside off the bench. To have that presence the other night against Yale, that was huge, especially for a team that was really thriving on second chance opportunities late in the game. I think having him out there was big. Of course you want to see him be a little, just like every big man, a little stronger with the basketball down low. But yeah, if you can get that consistently from him, and I like what you pointed out in the recap, I think he's starting to realize that, look, at this point, you came in wanting to be a jump shooter. That's just not really working out. We need you to be that big interior presence on the inside that comes in whenever Armando comes off the floor and Garrison kicks over to center, or whenever Garrison comes off the floor and you need to come in at that 4 spot. We need you to be that guy for us. It'll be interesting to see if he can build on that. And, I mean, another guy that has to step up is, his fellow graduate transfer, Christian Keeling. He's got to step up now. With Anthony Harris gone, they're going to need that production to be made up somewhere. And, we've been asking both B-Rob and Keeling to step up. B-Rob tried to against Yale and was successful. Keeling now has to show that, look, even though I haven't gotten off to a great start, I can at least bring something to the table for this team because they're going to need it in ACC play.
The biggest key to beating Georgia Tech is, can Carolina produce enough offense against the zone defense that the Yellow Jackets are going to throw at them? Mm-hmm. Carolina has seen zone at various times this year. Mainly it was in a in an attempt to slow down or contain Cole Anthony. They haven't really seen it a whole lot since Anthony got hurt, quite frankly, because the teams haven't had to play zone because Carolina's offense has just been awfully